guitar people. Welcome to another episode of the Guitar Show. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2008 limited edition Gibson Les Paul robot guitar. After an initial run of these in a kind of a aqua blueburst metallic kind of a color, they decided to make some more of these, and they chose to make these on the Les Paul Studio and the SG platforms. And what they did is they dressed it up a little bit. You'd see that the neck has full binding along with the headstock to make this seem much more of a premium guitar. Along with that, the Les Paul logo on the headstock is gone in favor of the, I don't know what you call this thing here, the typical kind of a logo here, but it's all kind of designed to make this guitar seem more than, you know, just a Les Paul Studio. Basically, that is what it is, though. It's got the same set of pickups. I believe they're a 498T and a 490R humbucker. These are kind of modernized takes on the PAF style humbuckers that were popular for many years. They've just been kind of tweaked a little bit frequency-wise for more modern styles of music and rock and things like that. They've been using these pickups on these guitars for a very long time. Like most other Gibson guitars, it's a 24 3/4 inch scale neck with 22 frets, and it's set into the body, glued with a joint. In 2008, they started playing around with and releasing these robot guitars. They did this by buying out a company called Tronicle in Germany, who had designed a system to basically tune the guitar. And this first version has probably the most accurate tuning, although it is not the fastest. Later versions tended to be faster and much less intrusive on the guitar. What you'll see on the back of the headstock here is you'll see these big honkin' robot tuners, and these are cast, I believe, magnesium. And supposedly they don't weigh any more than the standard tuners that were in use at the time, although that's a matter that's a little bit up for debate. The neck does dive a little bit, but kind of going hand in hand with that is that during 2006 and then up through, I want to say probably 2012 or so, maybe even 2011, they had taken the practice of chambering the bodies out. So this whole thing is hollow except for a very small core for all the hardware to mount to. It tended to make the guitars more resonant when unplugged, but my personal feeling on it is that it kind of robs you of sustain, and you know, the sound just kind of decays quicker, and the guitars sound a little bit more lifeless. I saw this with a couple of Les Paul standards from around the 2006, 2007, 2008 time frame that I had tried out in the store. They just they sounded okay on the attack, but as far as the sustain sound, they just seemed a little bit on the dead side to me. This is done in a metallic purple finish. I don't know if there's a fancy name for it, but it's basically metallic purple. This example is much darker than it looks in stock photos. The fretboard is ebony with your stock trapezoid pearloid inlays, and if you look really close you can see one of these knobs looks different. This is the master control knob, and when you turn it on you have various settings here. The guitar is capable of storing 6 different tunings, and it also has some modes to help you with setting your intonation and things like that. A closer look at the hardware will show you that what looks like a standard tune-o-matic bridge and stop tail, if you look at the back end here, each of these string ferrules has a ceramic insert, and that is designed to isolate the signal from that string. The bridge itself has sensors to pick up the tuning of the string as it's being strummed, so realistically when you strum all 6 of these strings, it's getting 6 different readings to figure out you know, what the pitch is of each of the strings that's being tuned. Now, the computer module is in the back in the control cavity, and it is built into the knob, and also packed in there is a nickel metal hydride battery pack. And there's another computer module on the back of the headstock where the tuners are. If you can see that, I don't know how well you can see that. So the question is, how do you get power and signal from the computer and the battery in the body of the guitar up to the tuners in the neck? You could bore out a channel in the neck, which would structurally weaken the neck very much, especially on a guitar or a line of guitars that has kind of a reputation for having weak headstock joints. What they chose instead was kind of an elegant engineering solution. It's the strings that carry the signal and the small amount of power to the robot tuners. So when you're tuning this guitar automatically, you need to keep your hands off of the strings, otherwise you'll short out the signal. It won't ruin the mechanism, but it will get a bad reading and not tune correctly. My first impression when I heard of this device was, what kind of lazy, incompetent guitar player needs a guitar that tunes itself? And I held this opinion for some months after it first came out. They were charging quite a premium for the first run of robot guitars. And after thinking about it for a while, it finally dawned on me what the use case of this type of a system is. If you can afford one Gibson, this guitar lets you go to a gig and play a whole set in various tunings that you might not be able to play unless you had 2, 3, 4 other guitars with you, or you were willing to do the retuning between songs and let the lead singer kind of chat up the crowd. It saves the guitar player from needing to pack out multiple instruments to bring to a gig. And also for studio use, I think it's a convenient way for the guitar player to kind of mess around with alternate tunings. I don't play in a lot of alternate tunings, so I won't show you a lot of that here, but just understand that you know, it does keep 6 tunings, which the newer models store many more and they tune much faster and quieter, but this was the first attempt at that. Other than that, it's pretty much a Les Paul Studio. The only other real feature of note here, besides the robot tuning system and some of the bling appointments like the binding, is that they replaced the output jack with a locking Neutrik jack, and that way you can't really easily yank the output lead out of the guitar unless you push the button and pull it out. So it's a little bit more safety and security as far as suddenly losing signal. Although if you're really at the end of your cord like that, I suppose you know, they just made it easier for you to pull the head down off of your amplifier. So that's another problem, I suppose, although typically the amplifier doesn't have a locking jack on it. It's basically just a Les Paul Studio, like I said, and it's got, this one in particular has a very punchy, bassy kind of a sound to it, due in some part to probably the way the pickups are adjusted. But it's a really cool sounding guitar. I played this for a while. I did add on aftermarket some pointer washers on the knobs for that vintage look, as well as this screwless pickguard. It attaches to the pickup ring mounting screws and doesn't have a bracket. Really just to complete the aesthetic look, since, you know, not having a figured top, it's just a solid color, even though it's a sparkly color. So I needed it, or I felt like I needed to give it some visual contrast. You can find these on eBay these days. I don't remember what these originally went for. I think I saw as high as maybe $2,700, $2,800, maybe in that range. My memory is a little bit foggy. On eBay these days, you'll typically find used ones of these for anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, depending on how the market's going at the time. They aren't making these anymore. They have improved the system, but you can still purchase replacement parts at this time from either Gibson directly or from Tronical if you want to order them in from Germany. I will say, having ordered a newer tuning system in from Tronical, if you decide you're going to order anything from them, you will likely be paying import duties to bring them into the US, as Tronical is in Germany, and it's just a bit of a pain in the butt. you might be better off just going through Gibson or scouring eBay for parts that that fit. The interesting thing here is, unlike newer versions where you could just turn the tuning keys, this one you need to pop the tuning keys up before you can turn them. If you attempt to turn the tuning keys without popping them out to unlock them, you're basically going to grind and then strip the gears inside and ruin your expensive robotic tuning head, which is going to require you to buy some of these replacement parts. The tuning posts are locking, so you don't have to wrap the strings around them a million times, and it's probably the most accurate tuning system that they came up with, as I said before, although it does tend to be slow, and that is really largely due in part to the fact that the strings are isolated from each other and are passing their own signal. So that's about all I have to say about this one today, so we'll catch you next time.